Hello all, and welcome back to another in-house edition of Short and Smoky. It's about 20 degrees out tonight, and it's been snowing on and off all week, so really haven't had the chance to smoke another cigar, but I had the same situation about a year ago, so I made a couple videos. One of those was how I rate cigars, and another was a tutorial of the app Cigar Scanner. Both of those were pretty popular, so I thought I'd come to you tonight with a video about cigar accessories versus necessities. So people will actually come up to me and my Smoking Hour co-host Stephen Midnight, be it at our shows or wherever. Friends of ours come up and say, I'd really like to be on the show sometime, or I'd really like to get into cigars, but I really can't afford to invest all that into them. Well, you don't have to. You really don't need the $500-$600 to $1,000 humidors. The electric cooladors, all that, $300 lighters. You don't need all that. Some of these things are just accessories. They're fun to have, they look cool, but there are a few things that are necessary when it comes to the hobby of smoking cigars. So what really do you need when it comes to cigars? What are the necessities? It really comes to four main things: a good humidor, a humidification system, a cutter, and a good lighter. But how do you go about choosing these things? Well, that's what I intend to show you here today on Short and Smoky. So the two main questions you need to ask yourself when you want to get into cigars is, one, how serious am I going to be with this? Am I just going to smoke a cigar, once in a blue moon, social events, when I'm out with friends once a month or so? Or is this something I really want to get into, maybe once a week, a few times a week, or, whenever, but something on a regular basis? And the second question is, what can I afford? There are so many ways to go about this. If you really only want to do this, just on occasion, you want to get you a couple cigars just to kind of have so you can smoke whenever, then, you can really just start out with a little travel humidor and a cheap lighter and cheap cutter. But if it's something you want to take a little more seriously, you really want to start dissecting the flavors and nuances of cigars, really get into rating them, as Stephen and I will do on the Smoking Hour or here on Short and Smoky. Or if you really just want to enjoy them more often, then you're going to need to kind of step it up a little bit. Now, the second part of that question, though, is again what we hear the most of. I really don't think I can afford it. You can start out with literally almost no money and just start sinking it into cigars. I personally don't recommend that, but it is a viable option. Now, as I stated, the first thing you will need is some type of humidor. Really just something to store your cigars in. It doesn't have to be some fancy $1,000 electric humidor, that lets you control the humidification and the temperature and all that remotely. It doesn't have to be that, and it doesn't even have to be one like this humidor of mine that I truly love. This beautiful wood design. It doesn't have to be any of this. You can really just start out with a couple dollars, and this you can buy at any Walmart. You can throw your cigars into a couple Ziploc bags, the gallon size bags, put you a few Boveda packs in there, close it up in this so they stay safe, and you're set. I have done this before. When I first got back into cigars, this is really all I had until I'd started investing in actual humidors. It's not really a long-term option, and it's also not great for aging your cigars. You really want some type of Spanish cedar in there to help you age your cigars. That way the flavors will really develop in them over the time that you're storing them. But if you're not really worried about that at the moment, or you're just getting started, again, this is a great way to start. Now, another option, of course, for storage, if you really don't think you're going to be investing in a whole lot of cigars right now, is the travel humidor. Now this is actually the first travel humidor that I ever bought. Here you can see it holds 3 cigars fairly snugly, but if you get much bigger cigars than these are right around maybe 6.5 inches. You really don't have much more room to work with, and this is really about the largest ring gauge you can put in here as well. But this actually done me pretty good. I used this for a couple years. It doesn't hold humidity that well though. Which I've even still got one of the Boveda packs I had in there, hard as a rock now. But this is what I kept in there for all that time, and it holds humidity for a couple days. You're really not going to get any long-term storage out of this. It's really just meant for day trips or a couple day vacations, something like that. But they are convenient. This one only cost about $15 to $20, and I'll try to include links to all that I have here if I can find them, if they're still available, in case you are interested in buying them for yourself. And none of this here is sponsored. Before I forget to say that, I'll give you my honest opinion on every last thing that I have here. But again, for the money, this was pretty good. It came with a little straight cut here that broke pretty early. I've actually kind of got it held together a little bit now. These things aren't really that great, but I'll get into that here in a little bit when I talk about cutters. Next up, we have another travel humidor. Now these are very classy. I actually was given this as a birthday present along with the cigar I smoked in the last episode of Short and Smokey. A huge thank you again to Eric, Nikki, Sunshine, and Elvis. I absolutely loved these gifts, and I can't thank you enough for them. But these here, like I said, are very elegant. Now again, these are not for long-term storage. This is for day trips or short vacations. What I actually use this for though is I throw this in my glove compartment in the car, and if I go to a cigar shop somewhere, as soon as I buy a few cigars, I put them right in here so I know they're safe till I get home. Come in very handy for that. And as you can see, they hold about the same amount of cigars. This is what's known as a 3-finger cigar case, and holds them pretty snugly just like that. Now a good thing about these type of cases, they can actually hold slightly larger cigars than the others. Here, this one has about another inch on it, and I can actually fit that in there. You just have to be a little bit careful with these because it's all about how tightly you close it. You can easily crush the cigars if you close it too hard, but just push it till it stops, and just like that, they're safe in there as they can be. Now the thing that I really like about this style of travel case is it keeps the cigars very snug in here, whereas on my old one, there's a lot of gap in here. Now I was actually kind of stupidly carrying my lighter in here as well, but it would get tossed around a lot, and it's just a lot of room for error in one of these. Whereas with this, slide a Boveda pack in there with your cigars, they're good to go. They're not going anywhere. Plus, these are just very sleek, very stylish, and you could pick these up at about any cigar shop. And most of them do come with their own cutter as well. And again, I'll get more into these cutters later, but this was actually a very nice cutter on this. Whereas compared to my other one had the plastic handles, this one is all metal and just a really sturdy build on this thing. And that of course brings me to my current travel humidor, this little guy right here, or this big guy right here I should say. It's not the prettiest thing, I will admit. It's kind of bulky, it takes up a good bit of room, but these work absolutely fantastic. Has a zipper on here, and just listen to this. That is an airtight seal on this. It is lined with a very thin layer of Spanish cedar, it said. I think that's kind of up for interpretation. But as you can see, I just put a Boveda pack in the top and one down here in the bottom. And this will easily hold, I think right about 5 to 7 cigars depending on the size of them. Maybe even more if they're really small. And you've got a little extra room at the top for some longer cigars, some Churchills and double Toros in there as well. Now again, this does kind of have the downside that there's a lot of room for them to shake around in there. They can get kind of beat up, but I usually have it pretty full if I'm taking a trip, or I just have one in there, and I might have a pack of matches down there with it to hold it in place. I do love this travel humidor, and it does have a little hygrometer on the top. It's not accurate at all, so I just keep Boveda packs in there every couple months, the little tiny ones. But it also has a place on the front, a zipper pouch, to put a lighter or cutter or anything else. And it's very sturdy. I mean, that is a very hard shell in there, wrapped in this fake leather with that little bit of Spanish cedar inside it. I really don't know if that's what it is, but that's what it was advertised as, so I'll go with it. Now, there are all types of travel humidors you can buy. There are some very bulky ones that have some foam padding in them. They're great, and I mean, that really is the top of the line for a travel humidor. I think they're kind of ugly myself. They look a little too much just like a tackle box. But, this one's not the prettiest, but I really do like it. I love the leather and just the hardware, the trim on it. I carry this with me on all my vacations, and you've seen it a lot on the smoking hour. And pretty much anytime I go smoking somewhere, I've got it with me. Now, all of these are great options for short-term storage of your cigars, for day trips or just taking them from the shop to your house. Even if you're just going to throw them in some type of plastic container when you get home, all these are great options for that. But if you really want to get into storing multiple cigars and letting them age a little bit longer, then you really need to step it up to some type of actual humidor. Now, this is actually my very first humidor, just a very small desktop model with the glass window on top. This holds about 25 to 50 cigars, so it advertises. I don't think I've ever fit maybe more than 40 in this thing, because I do have a lot more wider ring gauge cigars. But this got the job done for a couple years, really. I will say one bad thing about these glass top ones, though. They don't hold the humidity quite as well in there. And honestly, the seal on this is not the best. I mean, you can feel it sealing here, but a lot of air does escape from this thing. But again, it got the job done, and these only cost you about $25 to $30, maybe just a little bit more, and they are absolutely beautiful. And now you can get them with a little nameplate on there from some websites, and these are available again at pretty much any cigar shop. They don't cost much, and they will get the job done, especially if you're just getting into cigars. And they will help your cigars to age. They are Spanish cedar lined, and it will do a lot better job than just a plastic container. Now, one thing I will say about all of these humidors, though, is these little analog hygrometer, hydrometer, however it's pronounced. Yeah, they're no good. This one actually came on my bigger one. I just tossed it in here because I don't really use this humidor for anything anymore. But they're not great. They actually don't work at all. No matter what kind of humidor you get, definitely get you a digital hygrometer. Pretty much as soon as you put the battery in, they go to work immediately. You might have to calibrate them about once a year, but they work 10,000 times better than these analog ones. And of course, that brings us to the big boy here. My quote-unquote 150 count humidor. I have just under 100 cigars in this thing, and it's full almost. So, the numbers on those are kind of a little off, but I guess it's up to 150 cigars it'll store. This one has a nice little locking key. Just don't lose the key, because I found out the hard way. You can't just take this lock off. Even though these are very simple keys, you can just order another one. You're not getting that lock out. So if you lose this key, you're not getting into your cigars until you get a new one. Now, if you saw my tutorial of the cigar scanner app, you've seen the inside of this, but I have actually upgraded my humidification system in here. Huge shout out to Mylan Tobacconist in Roanoke, Virginia. I brought my humidor into the shop, and they installed this Boveda rack for me within about 15 minutes. So I can't thank those guys enough over there. They are truly the best cigar and tobacco shop in this part of Virginia. Anytime I'm in the Roanoke area, I stop in to say hey, and I suggest if you're in the area, you pay them a visit as well. Now, this is obviously my favorite humidor that I own. It's the one I've been using now for the last couple years. Again, it holds about 100 cigars, and it does keep humidity excellently in here. I've never really had any issue with it letting moisture in or out. Pretty much whatever percentage Boveda pack I'm using, it stays within 1 degree of that. So again, this is a great humidor, and I ordered all of these from First Class Humidors online. Now, I always suggest shopping locally. If you can find one of these in your local cigar shop, definitely support them. None of these, though, I've really found anywhere. I'd see them online, and I just love the look of them, so I went ahead and got them then. And they have great prices on there. Again, none of this is sponsored. I just really love that site. I think I gave less than $100, really, maybe right around $80 for this humidor. Again, about $25 for the glass top, and maybe about $15 for this one. Of course, the more expensive one holds a lot more cigars and does a lot better job at keeping its humidity. Again, it all comes down to, for one, how serious do you want to get into this, and how much are you willing to spend? If you're willing to spend a little extra money, I definitely suggest going for a really nice humidor. It doesn't have to be, hundreds of dollars or even thousands of dollars. But like I said, for less than $100, you can have something just like this. They're absolutely beautiful, and they definitely get the job done. You can store plenty of cigars in there and let them age for as long as you'd like. But one thing you definitely need to keep in consideration, though, is the larger the humidor, the harder it typically is to keep the humidity right. And that brings us to the next necessity, which is your humidification system. Now, I'm not going to waste any time on this. Boveda is the way to go. I don't like any of the other humidification systems I've used. This is just so much easier. It's not that expensive. I mean, my large humidor here takes about 4 to 5 packs. I usually put 4 packs in there. It does a great job at that. Now, you're supposed to use one medium-sized pack for every 25 cigars that your humidor will hold. So if yours holds 100 cigars, then you need 4 Boveda packs. If it only holds 50, you need 2. And of course, for these little ones, you can buy these little tiny Boveda packs like I showed you earlier, and these are usually less than $1 a piece. Then your medium-sized ones usually run you anywhere from $3 to $5 a piece, and you want to change them at the very most about every 6 months. Some people suggest every 3. I think that's actually what Boveda says themselves. I usually do it for 6 months, and it works just as fine. I usually do 72% humidity in the wintertime and 69% in the summer, since where I live it's very humid in the summer and usually a little bit drier air in the winter. Now, Boveda also makes this extra large pack here. Now, this is a 320 gram, whereas the medium size are about 60. So this is about the size of just a little more than 5 of the medium packs. You can throw one of these in your humidor, and that'll last an entire humidor this size. That's what I was doing for the longest time. But It does take up a little extra room because it's kind of bulky, so that's why I went with this new system, the rack that suspends from the lid, and that way I have all my shelf space in there to store more cigars. Now, just like the analog hygrometers, most of your humidors are going to come with some type of humidification system. And usually it's these things here. What this is like some green floral foam in there in a little plastic case. Then this one came in my smaller one. And then this one actually came with my travel humidor here. Fits right down in there. My suggestion, if you get these, throw them away. I have never heard anyone recommend these, and I do not recommend them myself. They are absolutely terrible. Mold starts to grow on them soon, and I definitely would never use water with them, even distilled water. There's this propylene glycol solution that you're supposed to use with them, and even that is kind of difficult after a while because you're supposed to pour it on, let it absorb it, shake out all the excess. But anytime I've used them after about a day or two, apparently I didn't shake out all the excess moisture and it starts dripping down onto my cigars. So, by all means, throw those things away. Don't use them. Definitely don't buy them. But just go with some Boveda system. And there are other humidification systems. Again, on some of the much more expensive humidors, it's all electric. It does it all for you. There are also some smart humidification systems that you can control from your phone. And there are some even more simple ones that you use this solution, but it's kind of like these little gel beads. Now, a lot of people really like those systems, and they probably do just fine. There's supposed to be no mold to grow from those, so they probably do just as good as anything else. But Bovedas take all the guesswork out for you. You literally just buy the percentage you're looking for, the right amount, throw it in there, call it a day. There is nothing else you have to do with them. I absolutely love them. They work perfectly, and I have never had an issue out of them. So I'll continue to use Bovedas, and that is definitely my suggestion on them. So humidification system, definitely a necessity. You do not want your cigars drying out. You definitely don't want them becoming too moist, or else you're going to have beetles hatch from them or mold grow on them. So you definitely want them kept just right. And my go-to, like I've said, is the Boveda packs. And they're not expensive at all. They'll work with any budget. So I really don't suggest anything else. If you find another system out there that works, by all means go for it, whatever you can afford. But these are just great all-around systems. So the next necessity you're going to need is definitely a cutter. Do not bite your cigars. You're not a barbarian. You are not a savage. Just get a cutter. I cannot stand, especially to be in a cigar lounge and watch people just bite the cap off. No, just stop. Please just stop. And I know there's people out there who will say, oh no, if you know the technique, you can just bite the cap off. Yeah, but most people don't. I definitely don't know the technique, and I say the majority of people out there don't. You're going to damage your cigar, you're going to bite it off too far, the whole thing's going to come unraveled, and you've just wasted a perfectly good cigar. Now, just like the humidors, cutters come in a wide variety of styles and, of course, prices. So, once again, it comes down to how much you're going to do this and how much are you willing to pay. Now, one good thing about a lot of lighters you'll buy, though, is many of them have a punch on the bottom of them. Now, I really don't use punches that much. I used to, and I really like the draw you get from a punch, but I really don't like the fact that tar builds up a lot easier on a punch and the cigar becomes bitter quicker. But I'm going to try to show you a few advantages and disadvantages to all of these. So first, of course, I'll show you the punch. Now, there are also different sizes of punch out there. This lighter that I have here actually has two different sizes on it. Now, personally, I like the larger size, And really all you're going to do is just stick it right there in the cap, pull out, and then after you pull it out, here is the piece you've punched out. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you now, don't worry, none of these are good cigars. These were just some trash ones that like I had that cracked. There were some cheap bundle cigars, and I actually had gone to a cigar shop for the sole purpose of buying some cheap cigars for these demonstrations. So there you are with the punch though. I don't have autofocus on the camera, so I'll have to show you this in post. It really just cuts out just enough to get a good resistance on your draw. That is the one thing I do like about punches. But again, because your area is so small here, tar will tend to build up a lot quicker and it really ruins the taste of the cigar. They're fine on smaller ring gauges and shorter cigars, but I definitely don't use a punch on anything this size. Now next up, of course, we have the V-cut. Now, I'm going to say right now, if you want a V-cut, I would definitely spend a little extra money on them. Usually the little plastic ones you get in smoke shops, they really don't last no time. They get dull really quick. And aside from mold, there's really nothing worse for cigars than a dull cutter. Because if you've got a really good cigar, but a really dull cutter, once again, just like biting it, you're going to crack right through it, ruin a perfectly good cigar. So what I have here is a Colibri V-cut, and I absolutely love this thing. You can't put it in too deep, you just set it straight in there and boom. Perfect V-cut. Now I will say, these are a little bit deeper than the cheap ones you'll buy in a smoke shop. So with that being said, you really need to watch the caps on your cigars. I had, a fairly high dollar Padron cigar just last year, and I thought I'd give it a V-cut because it was a box press cigar, and it cut too deep and ended up cracking the cigar on me. Now some of the advantages and disadvantages of the V-cut. The disadvantages, like I said, if it's a pretty shallow cap, you can crack right through the cigar fairly easily. And it's a different type of draw. I actually love the draw from a V-cut, but some people don't really care for it. It's different. Now, it doesn't work on all cigars that well. Naturally, if you have a torpedo-shaped cigar, you don't want to use a V-cut. I really only use V-cuts on really large ring gauges and box press cigars. The reason I do it on a box press is because sometimes a straight cut will bind the edges a little, so a V-cut will slice straight through it, and it gets a really good draw that way. And for larger ring gauges, I don't really like using straight cuts because there's absolutely no resistance on them. A V-cut gives really nice resistance, but perfect flow through, and I really do like the experience. But like I said, it does have its downsides, and if you want to do V-cuts, you really do need to invest in a decent cutter. I think I got this one for about $40, which is a little high for a cutter, but definitely not the highest one I have, which you'll see here in a minute. So finally, on to the most popular cutter, the straight cutter. Now, as I said, this is the one that came with that first travel humidor I bought. This is like you'll see in pretty much any smoke shop out there. They're really cheap. You can get these for less than $1. But I'm going to tell you right now, you do get what you pay for. I'm just going to cut right through the middle of this cigar here. And it took that much resistance and it just broke on me. I couldn't have planned that any better, breaking right here on camera. It cut pretty smooth through here, but it took a lot of pressure because these blades get so dull on these cheap ones. So I guess I'm going to throw that one out. So now we'll move on to this solid metal straight cutter that came with this other travel humidor. And I'm just going to do the same thing, cut right through the middle. and that cut right through it. No resistance whatsoever. But let's really put it to the test. Let's actually cut the cap off a cigar. And we'll do that here with a torpedo shaped cigar. So just get it right here, about a 1/4 inch down from the tip. Now some people go diagonal with it, some people straight. There's really no difference in it to me. You do what you like, but let's go ahead and give that a cut. Yeah, cut right through, no issue. Jaw's a little bit loose on it, but like I said, these are just garbage cigars. But yeah, really couldn't have cut it no better. And the really good thing about these, they're not that expensive either. A set of cutters like this might run you about $10 or $15, but they're pretty well reliable. You know, I'll cut this one again right down through the middle. Now I slowed up on that one a little, so it ended up cracking. And that is one major problem with straight cutters anyways. As you can see, you know, your fingers are not really going to close at the exact same rate. You know, no matter what you do, you can't really time it just right to where they both close together at once. So unfortunately, you will get a cracked wrapper every now and then. But there is one cutter that greatly reduces that. And that is the Cigar XO. Now, again, I'm not sponsored by any of these, but if you're going to invest almost $100 in anything when it comes to cigars, I would definitely make it this cutter. So what makes this any different than a normal straight cutter? Well, as I said, with the rest of these, you know, human error is a big issue. You can't close your fingers together at the same time. Well, with this, you don't even have to use both fingers. I'll show you here just one, you know, holding the edge here and just using my thumb. It does it for you. There's a little gear system in here, so no matter what finger you have more pressure pushing on, they're both going to close at the exact same time. So I'll show you a cut with one of these. And these do have a lifetime warranty on them. So do another pyramid. Perfect cut. Seriously, could not have cut that any better. And again, very loose draw, but this one actually has a little chunk tore out of it here. Hopefully that's not from beetles, but if it is, you know, I've not had this in my humidor with anything else. I literally just bought these to tear up for this video. And if I cut way on down the cigar, should be the exact same effect. Very clean cut right through the middle. Now, with that being said, this cutter does have its flaws as well. So something you could tell from the two of these is that this one has a lot deeper well to cut, and this one is pretty shallow. So you can get a lot more accurate cut with these shorter straight cutters. I have cut cigars down too deep with this Cigar cutter. It's one of the flaws of this thing, because like I said, it's just so deep you really can't see where the blades are coming. You know, you just have to get right up on it and then push it together until you see the blades actually touch the cigar. But you know, if you get in a rush and you just think, hey, here's a quick cut, you can really screw some stuff up. But that being said, I still highly recommend these, but they do cost upwards of about $80 to $100. Pretty much the same price I paid for this humidor. So they're not for everybody. But if you've got $10 or $15, definitely get you one of these little cutters. No, they're not perfect, but really none of these cutters that I have are. They all have their drawbacks. but this is ideal for most people. And a fun little tip that my Smoking Hour co-host Stephen Midnight actually showed me. I'd never heard of this before, but there's actually a little trick with using these cutters like this. I'll demonstrate this with a torpedoed shaped cigar, but this is really more used for the rounded caps. But all you do is set your cutter directly on top of a table or flat surface, then put the cigar right against that flat surface through the cutting hole and make a quick cut. It cuts off right where it's supposed to. And that's actually a really good draw from that one, cutting that a bit shallower than I had been. And you can't do that with this one. I'll even try it on the same cigar. You go down so far, and yeah, there we go. We have a monster cut off of that. I mean, it takes a good quarter-inch off of your cigar, and a lot of caps aren't even that big. So if you try that with this cutter, you're going to end up, ruining your cigar. So again, it's not perfect. For $80, I wish it would be, but all these are going to have some type of flaw. So what do I recommend when it comes to cutters? Well, again, if you're going to really take this serious, and if you can afford it, I would definitely go with the Cigar. It's definitely a great investment, and you're going to get a lot cleaner cuts than you would with anything else. If you want to go with a V-cut, definitely go with the Colibri. They're not quite as expensive as that Zycar, about half the price, but $35, $40 for a cutter is still a good bit. But for the average user, and really for anybody, these $10 or $15 straight cutters work just fine. And if you don't think you can afford that, then like I said, a lot of your good lighters will have your punch on the bottom. So finally, that brings us to lighters. Now, I have a small array of lighters here, which was pretty unintentional. I never really planned on having a collection of them, but I just accumulated them. Now, this is actually the very first torch lighter I ever bought when I got back into cigars just a few years ago. And it works just as good now as it did back then. Now, that's not to say all of these are awful. You can pick these up in most head shops, smoke shops, for about $1 or $2 a piece. And, they work. They're not great. These little single torch lighters, they're really not that good for larger ring gauges. They'll do pretty good for cigarillos, but honestly, if you're going to be smoking mostly cigarillos, I would get you a soft flame butane lighter like this here. This is actually my pipe lighter, but it works great for small cigarillos and really tiny ring gauges on cigars. With that being said, though, you can always use a Bic lighter. Now, I personally don't like using these to light a cigar, especially a larger ring gauge. It takes forever to toast the foot of these with a Bic, and really, they just don't put off quite enough heat. And usually I'm smoking outside, which a lot of people are, and these are definitely not windproof in the slightest bit. So you can use a Bic lighter. I know there's some elitist out there who claim, oh, well, it's going to ruin the taste of it. You're really going to ruin the flavors of the cigar. I personally can't tell any difference in the taste when it comes to a Bic. I really don't know anybody that can. So, there's plenty of people that use these to smoke their cigars. There's nothing wrong with it. I personally don't like doing it, but, it is what it is. Now, that being said, you can definitely tell a difference if you're using a standard Zippo lighter. Even right now, I could smell the lighter fluid on this, and I have lit cigars with these, you can definitely taste that lighter fluid. Zippo lighters will ruin the taste of a cigar. I do not recommend using these for this. They're cool to collect, and they work just good for smoking cigarettes, but I would not use this for a cigar unless you buy a butane insert. And they are readily available online and in many smoke shops. So if you have a really cool Zippo outer case that you like this one here with our band logo on it, you can just pull the guts out and put one of the butane inserts in there, and then you can smoke your cigars with the Zippo. And then we move on to my first actual cigar torch. This little quad torch here has the 4 burners in there. Pretty decent sized tank on this thing, but just like my first lighter, this works just as good now as it did then as well. This thing actually did work pretty good for a little while. Then the first time I filled it up, I don't know what happened, but there became a leak, and it has never held fuel since. I've tried to put some in there, and it just leaks right out. And it burned through fuel really quick anyways. These quad torches always do. It was a decent sized tank, but once you're burning all 4 jets at once, they don't last any time. So that one was kind of a bust. Then I actually picked this one up for about $20 at a little store in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. Just on a whim one day I found it. And this is the one that has the 2 different sized punches in the bottom. That last lighter had a little punch in the bottom as well. This one I just really like the shape of. I don't know, it just kind of reminded me of like R2-D2 or something. Just a different color scheme. But you just flip the top, then pull the switch down, and there you go. This was a pretty dependable lighter. It doesn't light every time. Averages about 1 in every 2 strikes. And the flames, I don't know if you can really tell this, they're really not the right height. They're not the same height as each other. But it was a really good lighter. I still actually use this one time to time. It doesn't hold fuel that long. It's kind of a small tank. I might get about 2 good cigars out of this, but I just really like the look of it. And it's a really dependable lighter. Only cost me about $20, and that's a little bit more than this one cost. This one was about $15 online. I think I got it on Cigar Bid. But this one conked out on me in no time, and this one still works a few years later. And that brings us to my biggest blunder when it comes to a lighter. This Lotus lighter here, I don't actually remember the model name of this, but they were kind of modeled after sports cars, where instead of there being a striker switch or lever on here, it has a start button, an ignition button. And I'll just show you real quick. 1, 2. This thing lights maybe 1 out of every 5 or 6 strikes. Now, the cool thing about this one, aside from the look, because I really did like the look of this one, and it has a punch in the bottom as well, but a little more accurate than this last one, the 2 torches in this, this is another dual flame, actually come together in a point, which makes it really good for toasting your cigar or touching it up. But the dual flame really helps to light it a lot faster than a single flame. This one does the same thing, kind of points them together, but like I said, the flames aren't really right on this one. You have to turn it up a little higher, and that kind of ends up making it a little too hot. But for $20, this was a great buy. I am ashamed to say that I paid almost $100 for this lighter. If I could go back in time and do it over again, I would send this thing right back or never even buy it at all. And that's not to say that Lotus makes bad lighters. I don't have one with me, but I'll tell you right now, the best lighter that you can buy are these little $10 Lotus Vertigo lighters. Actually, my Smoking Hour co-host Stephen Midnight owns one, so I'll try to show you his. But for $10, it's a little triple flame with a decent sized tank on it. They're not the prettiest looking lighter out there, but they do kind of have a cool little industrial look to them. But those things will strike almost every single time. I mean, on average, about 9 out of 10 times, it's going to fire. I don't know if maybe I just got a bad one with this one, but really from the start, I've had nothing but trouble from this lighter. I actually took it to a Lotus dealer, and they kind of tweaked it a little bit because the little striker coil in there was up too high. They put it down just a little bit, and it worked better after that, but still, well, see here it works. It works pretty good sometimes. But if any of these lighters get cold, they don't want to strike. That's one of the bad things about butane. And this one just seems to be even worse than the others. I still love the look of this lighter. It's a nice little conversation piece. But do I recommend spending $100 on a lighter? Absolutely not. I don't recommend this lighter. If you can get one of those old $10 Vertigos, they will do you absolutely great. They'll get the job done. So I've actually had people ask me, when they're looking to start investing into cigars, should they spend more on a lighter or a cutter? And to that, I definitely say the cutter. Because if we go back to, $100 for this versus $100 for this, you're actually getting your money's worth with this thing. Like I said, yeah, it has its issues, but this is not worth $100, really not worth $80. I don't think any cutter is, but this is a great investment, lifetime warranty. This will last forever. Whereas with this, I don't remember if I have a lifetime warranty or just a few year warranty on it, but I already tried to contact Lotus and customer service was just not great. And I'm not trying to bash them at all, but, I'm just very disappointed with this product. $100 for this versus a $10 lighter that they make that is almost perfect. Now, with that being said, when it comes to your lighters, you really want to watch what fuel you put in them. I really don't recommend this stuff that's available at most smoke shops, head shops. I don't recommend this in higher end lighters. You could put these in those Zippo inserts, they'll work just fine. Definitely you can put them in these gas station lighters. They're going to be just fine in that. And they're even just fine in a soft flame lighter. I use this one for my pipe lighter all the time. But when it comes to your higher end, definitely like your Lotus lighters, and even this one that's worked pretty well for me, I do use Lotus or Cigar brand butane. It is highly refined, so there's really hardly any impurities in it. It burns really well, and there is no taste on it whatsoever. This, I really can't notice a taste, but it doesn't burn near as well as the Lotus or Cigar fuel does. But whatever you do, if you are in a smoke shop anywhere and you see one of these little bottles of this tiny little butane refill bottle, that's all it says on there, do not buy this. If you have one, throw it out. I actually bought this a couple years ago to take with me on vacations in case this torch actually ran out of fuel while I was gone. Thankfully it never happened, because I have used this fuel once. This is absolutely disgusting. I wouldn't say this thing has been refined in the slightest bit. It is putrid, the taste that this puts off. I would rather light my cigars with the Zippo than with this fuel. I don't know who puts the stuff out, who makes it, but this should be pulled from shelves and eradicated off the face of the earth. So again, when you are looking for fuel for your torches, you definitely do want to spend a little extra money on some premium fuel. But as I said, $10, that's a great price for a lighter. You can get some really good lighters at that. $20 at the most. I don't suggest spending any more money on it unless it's just something really cool you like the look of. But again, I really like the look of this, and you see where I'm at with this now. Now, with all of that being said, you don't even have to use a lighter for your cigars. If I am indoors, I will pretty much always go for matches. But again, make sure you're getting some good quality matches. These here that say sulfur free on them are really good. Some of these Punch brand ones are pretty nice as well. And of course, there's always these that you can find at random cigar lounges lying around. Not really supposed to take these with you, but you know, they're souvenirs. Don't use these little matches on your cigars, and especially don't use a Strike Anywhere match. And all of that sulfur, the phosphorus, and all that in there, it's really going to ruin the taste of your cigars. So use some of these sulfur-free ones, and after you light it, let it burn down just a little bit to burn out all the rest of that, stuff that makes it strike, and let it burn down to the wood so you are lighting your cigar with just a pure flame. And then, of course, there are also cedar spills, or if you're smoking a cigar with a cedar wrap on it, as long as there's no tape or cellophane on it, you can actually take that cedar wrap off, and as long as you light that with something else, be it a lighter or a match, you can use that to light your cigar as well, and that cuts out any impurities and any foul taste that could be involved. That's really the purest way of lighting a cigar, but it can be a hassle. Even when I'm in a lounge sometimes, I'll just go for my lighter. I like using matches more so. Sometimes conditions just ain't right for them, even indoors. It's really easy to get a side too hot, get an uneven burn when you're using matches. So a good lighter is always a go-to, but again, $10, $20, don't spend any more. So if all of these are the necessities you need to smoke cigars, then what are the accessories? The things that you really don't need, but they are very helpful. Well, once again, these travel humidors. If you already have a humidor at home, you don't really need one of these. If you have a tube from a tubo cigar, if you're just going to smoke one cigar out when you're out one day, if it'll fit in that old tubo, you can just use that to protect it. And the cigar will be just fine for a day in there. It's not going to lose that much moisture or humidity, and it might actually help it acclimate to the weather around it. So these aren't necessary, but they are good to have, especially if you are going to be taking trips a lot, or you just like to have a little more protection for your cigars, or you might want to smoke multiple ones while you're out. Then again, these little flat ones here, like I said, they're nice just to keep in your glove compartment. So you go to cigar shops and you buy a couple cigars in there, you can throw it right in there, and they're safe until you get home. You can even leave them out in your car overnight if you forget them, and they'll be just as fine. Now, another accessory that is something you really should have if you're going to be smoking cigars a lot is, of course, a decent ashtray, and a cigar ashtray at that. Something a little bigger with a little bit wider gaps for your cigar to rest on. There are thousands of ashtrays out there to choose from, and choosing one of those is really just kind of what you like about it. I really like the glass ones and crystal looking ones, but I also like some of the ones that are branded with some cigar manufacturers on there. I have about a half a dozen ashtrays. This is the one that I usually use on the smoking hour and short and smoky. Just one I kind of keep in the car to take around with me. I have ashtrays scattered about at the places I frequent. That way I've kind of always got one on hand somewhere. But of course, if you're just going to be smoking in lounges, you can use the ashtrays there. Or if you're going to be smoking while you're, out walking or fishing or just outdoors, then, everywhere's an ashtray. Just don't drop your ash in dry leaves or on a mountain in a dry spell, because that could be really bad. And there are dozens of other little accessories and just cigar gadgets. There are the little perfect draw tools. There's the cigar clips, which I've looked at before. It's just kind of like a little clamp that has a clip on the other side. You put your cigar in that clip and you can clamp it wherever, like on a fishing rod or anything, a lawnmower, something so you can have a free hand. And then there's the little glasses that have the cigar holder built into the side. I don't own any of those. I've looked into them before. They're not really necessary. I have never needed the use of the perfect draw tool. I've had some tight cigars. I've had some with knots in them. Typically, you can kind of roll them out gently, or if you play guitar, you can actually take one of your wound strings, like your bottom E string, and you can just take a piece of that, run it through the cigar if you really need to. I've done it before when I've had a knot. It does help. I just personally don't see the need in some of these other things, but they can be helpful. Now, one accessory though that I do highly recommend if you're going to be smoking in your car is, for one, a smokeless ashtray, which I do not own, but also a little bottle of this smoke bomb spray. I don't have it with me right now. It's snowing outside, so I'm not going to get it out of my car. But one spray of this stuff and it eliminates all the smoke odor in your car. I can smoke a cigar in my car. I always keep the window cracked just a little bit, but that smell still accumulates. One spray of that after I'm done and I get out, the next day you'd never know you smoked a cigar in there. So that stuff works really nice as well. And finally, one last accessory is something we've seen on the channel a lot. You see it every episode of Short and Smokey and every episode of The Smoking Hour. That is, of course, a cigar journal. I made this one myself, naturally. If you've seen the video of me explaining my rating system, you'll see exactly how I came up with all of this, what it all means. But I've actually updated it a little. I have now included a cigar index in the back of this. But this is just a little spreadsheet where I can write down the cigar, the date I bought it, the shop name and the location where I bought it, and the price. Because something I run into quite a bit when I'm rating a cigar is I don't remember where I bought it, when I bought it, and how much I paid for it. So this is just a good way to keep up with it now. And a cigar journal, I believe, is honestly essential. It's not a necessity, but a cigar journal is an accessory that you really should take into consideration, either making one yourself or seeking one out that's available online. Because if you're really going to get serious about cigars, you want to keep up with your thoughts on them. That way you'll know whether you want to avoid it the next time or you'd like to try it again. And it will help you decide what are your favorite cigars. And a really good use of that is if someone's looking for Christmas presents, they want to get you a box of cigars, you can tell them exactly what your favorite is, and you can even hand them the page so they see what the band looks like. So, they really do come in handy. I've about filled up this notebook I created just a couple years ago, and I have no plans to stop rating them. I try to rate every cigar that I smoke at least once, and lots of times if it either came really close to 100 or it had a really low score but I think it can do better, I'll go back and rate it again. But if you'd like to see more on that cigar journal, then of course go back to either my second or third episode in the series, I can't remember which, that explained my rating system on how I rate cigars personally. So that's about all I have for you today. Again, all these decisions are on you. So how would I tier what you should really devote your money to if you want to start investing in cigars? Well, first off, I would definitely get you a decent humidor and, of course, your humidification system. I would put that at your number one priority. Number two definitely would be a cutter. Uh, Definitely over a lighter because you can buy cheap lighters, $10 ones, and like I said, these little $2, $3 ones from a gas station, they'll work in a pinch. They're not great, but they will work. And as for cutters, there are many cutters out there available. If it were me, I would invest a little bit of money in them, but there are cutters available for, $10 to $30 that work just great. But definitely, you do want to spend a little extra on a nice humidor, something that's really going to keep your cigars at a proper humidity and that's going to help them age over time. But again, you don't have to. If you only have, $20, $30 and you want to get started in cigars, well, this will cost you about $2 at Walmart. Get you a few baggies, gallon size Ziploc bags, a few Boveda packs. That'll run you about $10. So right there for your humidification system and your humidor, that's going to be under $10 or $10, $12 at the most. Another $10 for a lighter, so you're up to 22, and about $10 for a cutter. So you could really get started at about $30, and that's what I did. I started out with the plastic container, like I said, and I just had a couple cheap lighters and a cheap cutter. So that's where I started with, and it was actually a little while before I started investing into these better things. So once again, that really about wraps it up here today. And I didn't even get into any of my pipe stuff because this video is long enough as it is. If I started talking about all my pipe accessories, we'd probably be here another hour. Now, if there's any other questions you might have, such as how to properly season your humidor when you get it, I could do all that in another video, and there's plenty more topics to discuss here on the Short and Smoky in-house editions. Now, something else that I'd like to try this year on Short and Smoky, aside from in-house, is Short and Smoky on location, where either I alone or maybe me and Steven will visit some local cigar lounges and cigar shops, and we'll still rate our cigars there, but just kind of show you around, kind of give these places that we frequent a little free publicity. I'm not asking any money from them, of course. I just like to help out, local business, especially my local cigar shops. So again, I thank you for watching this episode of Short and Smoky. I'll try to be back outside smoking cigars as quick as I can, but we're right in the dead of winter now, so it might be a little while. But again, thank you for watching. I will see you all next time. Stay smoky, my friends.